In this week's video, come with me to explore a beautifully restored Victorian farm on a remote Scottish island. Hello and welcome to Through Lucy's Lens, weekly videos where I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you'll find it interesting too. I'm Lucy, a social historian and your guide on these journeys. And each week I visit a place that helps us understand the lives of ordinary people, how they lived, worked and built the world we've inherited. This week I'm still on the remote Scottish island of Sanday in Orkney. And here, standing close to the shore, is Boloquoy, a Victorian farmhouse and watermill that's been brought back to life with extraordinary care by Jackie and Malcolm Sinclair, working with Dave Walker, a specialist in vintage interiors. In their own words, it's not a museum because you can stay here. You can live here and immerse yourself in the house. And this is what I had the opportunity to do. When I arrived after 2 days of travel, long drives, ferries, rough crossings, the house quite literally felt as if it reached out and gave me a warm hug. To stay somewhere like this is quite literally a dream for me, something I've dreamt of for years and years, if not most of my life. And as a social historian like me, it just doesn't get any better. I spent a week living here, in this Victorian farmhouse with a 1950s kitchen, sleeping in the bedrooms that were once occupied by the Fee family. I read by lamplight and listened to the wind move across the fields. And in this video, I'll take you through each part of the house, room by room, and share what I learned about some of the people who lived here for 150 years. So settle in. Perhaps make a cup of tea and even grab a nice chocolate biscuit and come with me to Boloquoy. As you step through the front door, you enter what was once the heart of the house, the living room, or the ben end as it would have been called in 19th century Orkney homes. A butt and ben is a traditional Scottish farmhouse layout. The butt end housing the kitchen with a bed enclosed in a wooden box. And then the ben end being the good room, the better room, but also had a similar box bed. This room immediately feels lived in, with the scent of the oil lamp and the wallpaper, which is a faithful recreation of a late Victorian pattern, glows gently in the low light. Bolcoy was home to generations of the Fees. There's been a settlement here of some sort, probably as far back as the Neolithic period. The name itself has Norse roots, bolo meaning bull, and quay meaning enclosure. Shortly before his death in 1750, a Captain John Fee of Clestron and Stove transferred the lands to another John Fee of Setter. This made Boloquoy unusual, one of only a handful of owner-occupied farms on Sanday at a time when most were part of a large estate. In 1886, another John Fee, keep up with the Johns folks, with his wife Robina, returned here from Edinburgh to take over the family farm after the death of an uncle. They brought with them from Edinburgh not just their children, but the possessions of a lower middle-class city family, with an eye for decorative detail that must have felt quite sophisticated in such a remote farming community. When the Sinclairs purchased this home, it was originally going to face just a normal modernisation to become a holiday cottage. But they found that each room was packed from floor to ceiling, not just with furniture, but with the evidence of everyday life on this farm. Tools, clothing, letters, half-finished repairs and careful hoards of small, useful things. Among it all were wooden chests called kists, still packed with the possessions of the Fee family. Clothing, jewellery, letters, photographs and the kinds of intimate objects that usually vanish from history. They're all here in the house for visitors to touch, explore and used with a generosity to invite you to explore this space in a practical way, which I found quite astonishing. In this room are cupboards full of photo albums, drawers of original documents and artefacts found in the house. When you love social history, you can't help be charmed with artefacts such as the clay pipes found under the floorboards, and think, gosh, I wonder if the person who tossed this pipe away even realised that 150 years later, someone like me would think this was real treasure. It was these discoveries that led the team to take an unusual approach. Rather than modernise the house, they decided to turn the house back to the period that best reflected its heart, the late 19th century. They called it unrestoration, and I really love that. There would have once been a box bed in this room, which was removed, but the range is a faithful reproduction of the one installed by John Fee in the Victorian period. You really can imagine the family here, maybe in the late afternoon light while the wind is blowing a hoolie outside. Actually, while I filmed this footage, we were in the midst of a terrible storm, but I felt so safe. This room is a real balance between comfort and practicality. Every item here has a purpose. The chairs are sturdy and comfortable, and the rug is hand-hooked from old cloth. The lamps have been carefully restored to work again, yet nothing feels like a film set. It feels like a family home that's simply been paused in time. It's really special, and I'm not embarrassed to say that I had one of my big cries when I first came into this room. Almost all the house's current contents belonged to John, Robina Fee and their children, Annie, Jane, James, William and Violet. And they also found a few artefacts that preceded them, and they indicate that the house was much more basic prior to their arrival. If you've already seen my video about the house at Kerbuster Farm on Orkney, that video will give you a really good impression of what this house was like before the arrival of John and Robina. I sat here of an evening reading by lamplight, and it was easy to forget that we're more than a century away from the people who once gathered in this same space. There's a quiet dignity in this room and a real feeling that the walls remember everything that happened here. It's not spooky, by the way. People always ask me that. It's not spooky. This house was so warm, full of love. Next door, the kitchen tells a later story. We're going to go forward to the 1950s when Oliver Drever, one of the last Fees to live here, converted part of a barn to make room for modern conveniences. Mains water didn't reach Sanday until 1969. And electricity until 1974, but even then they were used sparingly. The kitchen today is true to that period in the 1950s. Complete with original utensils and enamelware, it's a space made for gathering. And here we were welcomed with a delicious homemade afternoon tea. Jackie, if you're watching this, those are still the best chocolate eclairs I've ever tasted. I spent many hours here cooking simple meals. I had the time to make bread for the first time in years. You can use all the equipment, and it's carefully been purchased as vintage dead stock, which means it's old but new, so perfectly safe to use. It quickly became my favourite room in the house because it's the sort of space that allows you to slow down without realising it. We were waking up really early each day because we felt like we had so much to do. And then you looked up at the clock that's been here for so long, and realised it was lunchtime. We'd just been sat talking. If you don't want to quite leave modernity behind, there's some modern appliances such as a microwave and toaster cleverly hidden from view. Genuinely, we didn't even use them. And you know what, I didn't film them either because out of sight, out of mind. But they're here if you want them. I was so excited just to sit at this kitchen table and read a 1950s copy of Women's Own while the bread proved, something I would never have time to do at home. The kitchen is also packed of interesting things about the family to pick up and read. There's household accounts, little notebooks, receipts, reminders to collect fuel or to buy eggs. For me, it was a dream of primary sources to really get a feel for life here, and goes right back to the 1970s, where you can even access the full accounts of this farm, which tell another story, but I'm not going to spoil that in this week's video. That's to come. The dairy remains much as it would have been, cool, simple and functional. It's a reminder of the household routines that kept the farm running smoothly, with cupboards full of goodies to explore again that were all found here in the house. Lotions, potions, farming equipment, dockets and books. Again, you can look at it all, touch it all, take the lids off and give them a sniff. This room, of course, also had a function. It's where butter and cheese would have been made on the farm. But skipping to the modern times, you also have a beautiful mid-century fridge that still works to store your food during your stay. Before the arrival of electricity, however, food would have been kept in this room in meat safes or cold slabs, and food would have been preserved in bottles and jars. It was interesting, actually, because we arrived, as a city dweller might do, with a car loaded with food and drink from a mainland supermarket. But as the week went by, we'd become more creative with how to use it, using leftovers and even some turnips out of the garden to make delicious stews. We all agreed that we ate so well while we were here, because we had what we had and we used what we had, instead of popping out to buy extras every day, which probably would have led to more waste. The room that was once the downstairs ben end is now a comfortable downstairs bedroom. The furniture and layout reflect its origins while still providing a restful space for guests. There was once a box bed in here, but it was deemed a little too small for modern heights, so a lovely cosy bed has been pushed into the space. This room features a lot of decoupage. That's the art of taking pictures and placing it onto furniture for decorative purposes. Piles of scrapbooks were found from across the ages showing that generation of fees enjoyed scrapbooking. So that is a nod to that in this room. Again, this room is packed with findings and belongings from the family that you can enjoy and explore. And the bedding you can sleep in is Victorian. And my goodness, is it comfortable. Upstairs, the first bedroom is dedicated to Annie Fee. She was the eldest daughter of John and Robina Fee. A portrait was found of Annie, along with several pieces of jewellery containing her photo, plus a lock of hair and a Victorian mourning bracelet made from human hair. Annie was a seamstress by trade, and she died in her early 20s of tuberculosis while working in Edinburgh. Her belongings, sewing tools, clothing, small items of jewellery and her childhood scrapbooks were all found during the restoration and now fill this room. The wallpaper, including the border, was found in rolls in the loft. The bedding is all vintage, some made from fabrics found in the restoration and others reclaimed from Victorian cotton sheets and blankets. This space feels very personal, tender, feminine, and full of quiet dignity. Guests, like in every room, can interact with the objects, open the jewellery boxes, explore the doll's house that's been restored with pieces of original wallpaper taken from different rooms in the house. And in this room, you can even sleep in a traditional Orcadian box bed. This is the room my mom bagged, by the way. And as you know, she is a doll's house artist and enthusiast. So should you ever find yourself in this room, Jackie and Dave kindly gave Mom permission to add some of her own touches to the doll's house. And she made them from natural items foraged on the local beaches during our stay. The second bedroom upstairs reflects the family's long connection to the sea. Several of the female served in the Navy, and this room honours their stories. Photographs, naval records, and even a restored ditty box reminded me how deeply Sanday's identity is tied to the water. This was the room where I stayed, and who is going to turn their nose up at a 4-poster bed? You might think the bed is out of place, but there's evidence to say that there was once a 4-poster bed here and in other farmhouses on Sanday. And let me tell you, this bed was like sleeping on a cloud. This room is again packed with things to explore, from original copies of Forces Gazettes, which I devoured. The adverts in the back were so interesting. The photos of the boys in the room were very moving. And don't worry, there's a video coming up where I'm going to go into a lot more detail about the house's residents. So be sure to subscribe to catch that, as it's beautiful. By now, you may have been wondering, Am I expected to use a chamber pot to live the full Victorian experience here? There is a chamber pot available should you fancy using it. However, there's 2 bathrooms available in the house. The upstairs bathroom is carefully hidden and felt like entering Narnia. It contains wallpaper carefully recreated from fragments found during the restoration, preserving the patterns discovered on the walls, and the presence of John Fee lives on even in the bathroom through the wooden panel preserved on the wall. Everything in this house is there for a reason, and I tell you, the more I got to know Dave and Jackie, I've never met 2 people who cared so much about things being right. And the longer you're in this house, the more obsessed I became with all the stories of the residents too. There'll be a video coming up where I go into far more detail about what I found, including stories about pirates, runaways, tornadoes, and even witches. I mean, it's a never-ending story. But in this video, I want to tell you the meaning of this pelargonium. You see them all over Sanday, and like most things here, there's a history. The pelargonium, including this plant in Boloquoy, all descend from a plant that was on the ship the Athena, which was wrecked off the coast of Sanday in 1886. When the Athena ran aground somewhere near Start Point in July 1886, local fishermen helped to rescue the crew. They brought them ashore and took them into their homes. After the ship was declared a total wreck, the crew members were taken back to salvage what they could of their belongings. Amongst the skipper's effects was a pelargonium, which he gave to the lady of the croft that took him in. The family kept the plant going, taking cuttings from it to ensure that it survived. The daughter, who was the last in the line of the family living in Sanday, found herself unable to look after the plant anymore. So she passed the plant to the Heritage Centre, who in turn allow a cutting every now and again to be donated to someone else, including this one at Bolcoy. The cutting was just flowering for the first time during my visit, and it might sound daft, but it's stories like this that keep me hooked on history. Talk about keeping history alive, quite literally. Finally, within the house, I want to show you what will probably be the biggest surprise, because this room looks to the future of the house, celebrating the fact the Fee family were forward-thinking, and John Fee in particular was always looking for new ways to bring modernity to the island. So here is the most spectacular, and I think you'll imagine unexpected, spa bathroom. Here you can soak in the slipper bath and even take a sauna, a nod to the ancient Nordic roots of the island. This room looks to the future, and it's the investment that Bolcoy always has and continues to grow with the times. This was a place to switch off completely, and this room can only help, right? I thought it was an amazing twist, but again, it's hidden at the back of the house. So if you want to ignore it and take a bath outside in the tin bath, like a good Victorian farmer, you're very welcome to, because there is one. But let's face it, who can resist a soak in a slipper bath with posh bath salts? Outside, the farm continues to reveal its history. The old watermill stands by the shore, weathered but waiting for restoration. Anyone staying or visiting Boloquoy will be directly investing in this restoration to allow the watermill to grind again and supply education and heritage crafts. You're welcome to walk up and explore the watermill. It's yours while you're here. I had a look, but I didn't spend too much time in here as there was a family of swifts nesting in the rafters feeding their young, and I didn't want to get in the way of that delicate process. The barn is a treasure chest and houses an array of artefacts uncovered during the clearing of the house, for which there isn't space inside. There's tools, furniture, objects, letters that tell a story of daily life at Boloquoy, and you're welcome to explore it all. I mean, you can be the curator here. It really is something. The surrounding land belonging to Boloquoy is being restored to mirror historic field patterns. This supports wildlife and allows visitors to see heritage crops and livestock. Outside, there's a walled garden containing an allotment, and visitors are welcome to harvest any food that's ready: turnips, swede, cabbages. This garden will be overflowing come summer. The mill pond has been renewed with the support of the RSPB, and it attracts birds, and the landscape is alive with otters, barn owls and puffins. You can see puffins here from May to August. There's also kestrels sweeping, looking for a mouse in the air. There's a field of friendly horses named after all of the children of John and Robina Fee. And next summer, a hand-reared Highland cow will be moving into the paddock. Rupert, of course, was obsessed with the horses, and it seems little Oliver was just as enamoured with him too. I enjoyed a stroll down to see them several times a day, sometimes treating them to the odd piece of turnip from the garden. Chopped up, of course. Staying at Bolcoy was a privilege, and to be honest with you, I still can't get over that I had the opportunity to do so. The care and dedication of Jackie and Malcolm Sinclair and Dave Walker have created a place where history is tangible and immersive, and I genuinely don't think there's anywhere else. I'm going to put my neck on the line. I genuinely don't think there's anywhere else in the UK at this point where you can do this. I'm deeply grateful to them. Boloquoy welcomes visitors for tours, afternoon teas, and from 2026, residential stays. You have the opportunity to experience a pace of life, attuned to the land and the rhythms of the past. And now you've got to listen to my final reflection. If you've got this far, congratulations, gold star. Because here I go. So what did you think of Boloquoy, Victorian Farm and Watermill? I've been here now for 5 nights, and I've been dreading making this reflection video because number one, it means I've got to leave. So that probably gives you a good idea how the direction I'm going to go with my reflections. 2, reflection is a balanced, the good, the bad, the ugly. But I'm finding it really difficult to say anything bad. And that's not because I've been invited here, that's because it's the truth. Hopefully you know me well enough by now that if there was something, I would say in kindness. When we first got here, it's not just me, I haven't come on my own. I'm with my husband and also my mum and her partner as well. And myself and mum, we are, as you know, really into history. I walked in through the door, burst into tears, big, ugly. I actually couldn't breathe. I don't know if it's because I was so tired from the journey, but I honestly couldn't believe what I was seeing and smelling. The oil lamp was on, the light was low. I'd been travelling for 2 days. I was exhausted. As you'll see in another video, we chose to take the long route because I wanted to get an experience of how, you know, the journey, it's a long way. And I just walked in this room and I couldn't believe what I was seeing in front of my eyes. As you know, going to living museums is my favourite thing to do in the world, but you visit, you look around, you loiter. For me, sometimes it's a little bit tricky because there might be guides or other members of the public. And here I was in this mind-blowingly authentic space, and it was going to be mine for the week. But then some of the other members of the party felt a little bit stressed because there was no TV. There's barely any internet here. You can actually, if we're going to talk about in the modern world, you can get 4G here. So if you need your phone, not the end of the world. A little bit stressed, a little bit, oh, you know, what have we done? I'm not sure we're going to enjoy it. But the difference in them between the day we arrived and now is extraordinary. Nobody's looking at their phone. Nobody's checking the news. Even my mom, who is the world's biggest Radio 4 addict, has turned off this rolling news. And we have actually missed quite a few big events while we've been here. I won't go into that now because I don't do politics on this channel. But it's been so nice to genuinely switch off, not have to think about... I haven't been able to check my emails really a lot of the time. And although in reality living here would have been very, very hard, they wouldn't have had a spa bathroom, let alone another bathroom upstairs plugged in. Would have been working on the fields, it would have been cold, it would have been windy, it would have been wet, it would have been hard. I think coming from a modern perspective, and this is going to sound really silly, for some people, weaning yourself off modern life is quite a difficult process. I find it easier than most people because I got here and I was like, it felt like me, Alison, when I'd stepped into Wonderland. This is what I'd been dreaming of ever since I was a little girl and stepped into the first room at the Black Country Museum or in a National Trust house. I dreamt of this, but the other people in my party hadn't necessarily, and it was all a bit stressful for them. But now, none of us want to go home. Everybody's so relaxed, windswept, happy, well fed. No fast food here. If you want it, you've got to make it. Going to that, another reflection I've had is, could you live like this in modern times, really, unless you had a small holding and that was your livelihood? Could someone like me, who works full time, commit to a life where you are self-sustainable? Well, no, because I just wouldn't have the time. I can't do the trad housewife thing because I'm working for 40 hours a week, plus YouTube takes a lot of hours out of me as well, which is fine, by the way, I'm not complaining. But it's just been really interesting to reflect on how people's lives have changed. How in one respect it was difficult, but when you look at it from modern eyes, although there would have been stresses, the stresses we have today, when they're taken away from you, you feel so much better. And I think we're all going home having a genuine break. You might go to a holiday cottage usually and you might feel still a little bit, I don't know, you might still be checking your emails, you might still be watching the telly all the time with the news on. We haven't had any of that. We've also had the most comfortable beds I've ever slept in, and my challenge when I get home is away from the kind of continental quilt, and I'm going to source an eiderdown and blankets and a feather bed, because that is the way to sleep, folks. I tell you, it's so much nicer. It's been wonderful, it really has, and I just want to extend my thanks to Jackie, to Dave and to the team at Orkney Luxury Retreats for not only inviting me but embracing me, being so supportive of me. I'm just Lucy from Birmingham, you know, I don't have any letters in front of my name, or I'm not a famous person. to trust me to come here and handle these objects. And they're trusting you to do the same. If you want to come and stay here, you will have access to the objects 24/7. You can live, breathe Boloquoy for however long you're here. Also, the Heritage Centre down the road in Lady Village has been amazing. I've spent a lot of time there going through records, not only for this video, but for other videos that I've made on the island too. Incredible resource. And the people here in Sanday are so warm, so friendly, so willing to get to know you and vice versa. And I've made friends. So it's all been absolutely wonderful. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you feel like you would like to spend a day, a night, a week in a Victorian farm, I've also linked the details below how you can do that. Plus there is a link to another video, a beautifully made video by the owners themselves that talk about the renovation process of this property as well, that of course you're going to find interesting. So hop over there at the end. So that's it for this week. I don't know, has it been a long one? I imagine it's been a long one. So thank you if you've got to the end. As always, like, subscribe, share, all that modern stuff that, if I'm honest folks, I don't really want to think about at the moment. Ugh. Thank you as always for your support. Without you watching these videos, this would never have happened. Lots of thanks. I've really got to go back to the modern world tomorrow, haven't I? Oh, I think that's going to be a bit of a shock too. But until next week, where am I going? I don't know. But hopefully you will join me. See you soon. Goodbye. Of this property.